In a desolate battlefield, a pregnant woman is being ruthlessly hunted down. To make matters worse, a searing pain in her abdomen signals the baby is coming. She reaches a massive boulder, glances around cautiously, and removes the weapon strapped to her body. Lowering herself to the ground, she leans back against the rock, preparing for labor, but just as she takes a deep breath to brace herself, a gleaming sword plunges down from above. She rolls away in the nick of time, grabs her weapon, and strikes back. As a warrior from the forbidden land of Sanju, her combat skills are unmatched, capable of taking on 100 enemies alone. But now, the sharp pain in her stomach drastically weakens her strength. Even so, she manages to eliminate her attacker. Before she can catch her breath, 3 more enemies appear in the distance. She grabs a fallen weapon and charges forward. The enemies surround her, attacking from all directions. Just as she's about to finish them off, a wave of pain surges through her abdomen, breaking her concentration. One enemy seizes the opportunity and drives a blade into her belly. In the end, despite her injuries, she defeats them all. She rips off one of the enemy's cloaks, leans against the boulder, and prepares to deliver her child. But as she pushes with all her might, another enemy emerges. Exhausted and powerless, she falls into despair. But then, something unexpected happens. The enemy lowers his weapon. He removes his helmet and reaches out to her with open hands, offering a silent gesture of encouragement. Her unyielding willpower has moved the soldier. With one final effort, she gives birth to her child, but due to her severe injuries, she only manages to look at the baby once before closing her eyes forever. The soldier gazes at the lifeless woman and the child in his arms, and makes a decision that will change his life. What he doesn't know yet is that this choice will one day save the entire world. Years fly by. That newborn has now grown into a young man named Rand, who was raised by his father in a quiet village along the 2 rivers. He grew up with Perrin, Matt, and his girlfriend Egwene. The 4 of them have been inseparable since childhood. Today, Egwene has returned, and the villagers cheer her arrival. She has just completed the village's coming-of-age ritual. Under the guidance of Nynaeve, the village wisdom, Egwene was pushed into the raging river. The current was strong, and she struggled fiercely, fear gripping her heart. But then she remembered Nynaeve's story, how to overcome fear. Gradually, she found her inner calm. Egwene passed the trial with flying colors. The villagers cheered her on, celebrating deep into the night. But their joy was suddenly interrupted when the doors of the inn burst open. A man in a dark cloak entered. His name was Alon, a warder. Following him was a woman named Moiraine and Aeis Saida. Aeis Saida are no ordinary people. They are chosen by the light, capable of wielding the one power, able to change the tide of war on their own. The villagers were stunned by her arrival, falling silent at the sight of the Aeis Saida ring on her hand. The innkeeper quickly offered her a room, but Moiraine didn't go upstairs right away. Instead, she carefully observed Rand and the others, young adults all around the same age. Only then did she follow the innkeeper to her lodging. The next morning, deep in the forest near the village, Warder Alon discovered something disturbing: a field of animal corpses. What made it even more unsettling was that the bodies had been ripped open and arranged into a strange, ominous symbol. Back in the village, no one suspected the looming danger. Everyone was celebrating, singing and dancing in the streets. Suddenly, a battle axe whirled through the air, striking a young man square in the chest. He died instantly. The crowd froze in horror. Then came the scream. Trollocs. Panic erupted as people scattered in every direction. Egwene was frozen by the brutal scene unfolding before her. Nynaeve spotted her and rushed over, pulling her to safety. Perrin and his wife Layla ran back home, bolting the door behind them. At the same time, Matt returned home only to learn from his parents that his 2 younger sisters had gone missing. Furious, he stormed out into the chaos to search for them. The village had become a bloodbath. Trollocs were slaughtering people mercilessly, treating them like livestock. Nynaeve, with Egwene's help, tried to save the wounded villagers, but as she looked upon the mutilated bodies and savage attackers, fear and helplessness filled her eyes. Elsewhere, Rand and his father stood at their door, weapons drawn, bracing for an attack. It didn't take long. A Trolloc broke through. The 2 fought back fiercely, but their strength was no match. Both were quickly overwhelmed and knocked down. Seizing a chance, Rand's father pulled out a blade hidden under the bed. For a moment, the warrior he once was returned, but age had dulled his reflexes. He was pushed back, cornered against the wall, severely wounded. As the creature moved in for the kill, Rand seized his moment, driving his blade into its back. The Trolloc fell. Father and son had survived. Meanwhile, Perrin and Layla weren't so lucky. A Trolloc burst into their home. Perrin grabbed an axe and tried to fight it off, but was quickly overpowered. Seeing this, Layla rushed in with a blacksmith's hammer to help. Together, the couple managed to bring the monster down. Consumed by rage, Perrin hacked at the body over and over, but then he heard a sound behind him. He swung his axe without thinking, only to discover he'd struck Layla. She collapsed in his arms, mortally wounded. Across the village, Nynaeve and Egwene were spotted by Trollocs. Nynaeve fought back with a dagger, but it was hopeless. Just as a blow was about to land, a brilliant beam of light exploded through the air, vaporizing the creature. Moiraine and her warder had arrived. With Lan defending her, Moiraine summoned the power of the One Source. Reinforcements had come and the villagers were emboldened. They rallied. They fought back. Mat found his sisters and got them to safety. As Moiraine subdued wave after wave of Trollocs, Nynaeve and Egwene continued helping the injured. But then, another Trolloc caught Nynaeve off guard, dragging her away. Her fate unknown. Despite Moraine's power, the number of Trollocs was overwhelming. Lan was pinned down, and a blade slipped past his guard, striking Moiraine. She pulled the dagger from her side without hesitation. The Trollocs charged. In a final act of strength, Moiraine unleashed a powerful surge of magic light erupted across the sky. The battle was over, but the village was in ruins. Countless lives were lost. Moiraine tended to Rand's injured father. As she turned to leave, Rand stopped her, demanding to know why the Trollocs had attacked the day after she arrived. Moiraine finally told them the truth. 20 years ago, an Aeis Saida at the White Tower had a vision. The wheel of time had begun to turn again, and from it came a prophecy. The Dark One, long thought sealed away, was stirring once more, and only one person could stand against him: the Dragon Reborn. The prophecy claimed the dragon had not died, but had been reborn. For possible timelines pointed to the two rivers, and the four young villagers all matched. That was why Moiraine had come. The Dark One had learned of this too. He sent his minions, the Trollocs, to kill them. Even now, more were coming. To protect the village, the four had to leave, drawing the threat away with them. As villagers watched, the group departed. The Trollocs gave chase. At the river's edge, they boarded a boat and crossed into deeper waters. The creatures, unable to swim, stopped at the shore. It bought them some time, but they had to reach the Aeis Saida as quickly as possible. Later, while taking a short break, Perrin limped to the riverside to fetch water. Pain shot through his leg, an old wound from the earlier battle. Then he heard it, a low growl. He turned to see a pack of wolves staring him down. Frozen in fear, he could barely move. One of the wolves approached slowly, but instead of attacking, it began to lick his wound like a comrade tending to an injured friend. Then, just as suddenly, the pack turned and disappeared into the trees. That night, Moiraine called Egwene outside. She placed a gemstone pendant in her hand. With Moraine's guidance, the gem began to glow. In that moment, Egwene felt something stir inside her, a surge of power. Moiraine told her this was the one power, and one day, when she learned to touch the true source, she would become an Aeis Saida. From then on, they traveled non-stop, never daring to slow down. But one night, just as they lay down to rest, a new horde of Trollocs appeared. The group fled. The monsters closed behind. Suddenly, their horses refused to go any farther. Before them stood a towering, crumbling wall. Behind them, the Trollocs had also stopped, as if afraid of what lay beyond the wall. With nowhere else to go, the group entered the abandoned city. The moment they passed through, they sensed something was wrong. There was no life, no sound, as if fire had scorched every corner. Moiraine, poisoned from a past attack, collapsed, her condition worsening. Lan recognized the place. It was Shadar Logoth, once the grandest city of them all. One night, its entire population mysteriously vanished. Legend says a great curse fell upon the city, consuming every living soul. He warned them, touch nothing. They decided to rest for one night and leave at first light. But while sleeping, Mat was awoken by a strange whisper. He followed the voice into a ruined room and found a small box buried in the rubble. Inside was a beautiful dagger, but the moment he drew it, something terrible happened. A dark force burst out, instantly disintegrating a nearby rat. The darkness began to spread, separating the group. They were forced to flee in different directions. The shadow overtook the city, devouring everything. Lan carried Moiraine on horseback and escaped. Perrin and Egwene had no choice but to leap from the wall into the moat below. Rand and Matt found an exit of their own. They had survived but were now scattered, cut off from one another, in the woods beyond the city. Lon took a breath of relief only to feel a blade press against his neck. To his shock, it was Nynaeve. She hadn't died after all. She had escaped from the Trollocs and tracked the group this far. Believing Egwene and the others were in danger, but she was no match for Lon and was quickly subdued. Moiraine was worsening, and Nynaeve, trained in healing, offered her help. After striking a deal, and with Nynaeve's help, Moiraine's condition was finally brought under control. The three of them set off toward the territory of the Aeis Saida. Luck was on their side before long. They encountered a team of Aeis Saida on a mission. Among them was Moiraine's close friend. Thanks to her healing, Moiraine finally recovered. From her friend, Moiraine learned the purpose of their mission: to capture a man who claimed to be the Dragon Reborn. His name was Logain. He had awakened his powers, overthrown the royal family of the Kingdom of Gildan, and broken the sacred rule forbidding men from using the One Power. The White Tower had ordered his arrest and trial, but Logain was incredibly powerful. Only by joining forces both the Red and Blue Aja had they managed to seal him. Just then, those loyal to Logain launched a surprise attack. In the chaos, Logain suddenly broke free from his bonds, sending the guarding Aeis Saida flying with a blast of power. Just as he shattered his prison, Moiraine arrived. Together with two others, she tried to seal him again, but the cost was great. One of the Aeis Saida died in the attempt. Seeing her closest sister fall in battle, Liandrin of the Red Aja lost control, channeling the One Power with reckless fury, determined to end Logain no matter the cost. At that moment, the others arrived. A warder, consumed by grief over his fallen Aeis Saida, charged in blindly. The disruption gave Logain an opening, but Nynaeve, standing at the edge of the crowd, remained untouched. As she watched Alon bleed out in front of her, something within her was unleashed. An incredible burst of energy surged from her body, healing Lon and stunning everyone, with Liandrin seizing the moment. The Aeis Saida united their power and used a forbidden Red Aja incantation to sever Logain's link to the One Power, stripping him of his abilities and leaving him a mere mortal. Meanwhile, after fleeing the cursed city of Shadar Logoth, Perrin and Egwene traveled through the night and arrived on a vast plain. Before they could rest, a pack of hungry wolves emerged from the shadows. The two ran in panic until the wolves stopped suddenly, as if guiding them. It was then Perrin noticed wagon tracks on the ground. Following the trail, they ventured into the woods and met a nomadic group known as the Tuathin, wanderers with no fixed home. They lived outside the rules of kingdoms, offering shelter to those with nowhere else to go. With no better options, Perrin and Egwene joined their caravan, headed toward the White Tower. Elsewhere, Matt and Rand had also lost contact with their companions. They climbed a nearby hill, hoping to spot someone, but saw no sign of the others. They decided to head toward the White Tower, hoping to reunite along the way. On their journey, they spotted a small town in the distance and, exhausted, decided to rest there. But as they neared the entrance, they were met with a grim sight: a corpse hung in a cage, riddled with arrows. Clearly, this was not a welcoming place. Inside a tavern, they caught a performance by a traveling gleeman. When the show ended, the gleeman approached them, expecting payment. Matt, broken bitter, refused, but as he reached to pay for their room, he realized his coin pouch was missing now somehow in the gleeman's hands. Unbeknownst to them, someone had bumped into Matt earlier and stolen it. The gleeman, noticing the theft, had stolen it back but never returned it. With no money, Rand and Matt were forced to work at the tavern in exchange for a room. Later that night, Matt wandered to the village gate, eyeing the dead man's belongings. Before he could make a move, the gleeman appeared again. He wasn't there to loot, but to give the man a proper burial. He told Matt that the dead man had been a warrior from the Blightlands but somehow had fallen to mere peasants. When the gleeman asked Matt what brought him there, Matt confessed his reasons. Instead of judging him, the gleeman helped him bury the man. Afterward, Matt got his coin pouch back. Meanwhile, Rand was ambushed and locked in his room at the inn. He grabbed his weapon but was quickly overpowered by a woman. Using brute force, he managed to break out and escape. He met back up with Matt, and though confused, they both fled, but the woman found them again, revealing she knew their potential. One of them could be the Dragon Reborn. She served the Dark One and planned to offer them to the Shadow Spawn. Just then, the gleeman reappeared, killing the woman with a thrown dagger and rescuing them. Knowing more enemies were on the way, the three escaped under cover of night. Exhausted, they sought shelter at a nearby farm. The farmer, wary at first, allowed them to stay in his barn in exchange for chores. While cleaning, Matt suddenly became ill and vomited a pool of dark, inky substance. That night, Rand awoke to find Mat missing. They searched and found the farmer's family murdered, with Mat standing inside, dazed. Then, a fate emerged from the shadows. The Gleeman stepped in to fight it off, allowing Rand and Mat to escape. After days of travel, they finally reached the city where the White Tower stood. They found a cheap inn and settled in. At the same time, Perrin and Egwene were nearing the city when their caravan was stopped. They were ambushed by the Whitecloaks, a group opposed to the Aeis Saida. The Whitecloaks demanded Perrin and Egwene be handed over. Sensing danger, the two tried to flee but were quickly captured. Egwene was scrubbed and dressed in white robes, then tied to a chair. Perrin was bound to a rack nearby. The White Cloak leader, Valda, believed Egwene was an Aeis Saida and began torturing Perrin to force a confession. As the pain intensified, Perrin's eyes turned golden, hinting at a mysterious power awakening within him. After what seemed like endless torment, Perrin broke free and let out a furious roar. Golden eyes locked on his captor. Egwene seized the moment, stabbed Valda, and the two escaped. Outside, the White Cloak camp was in chaos, attacked by a pack of wolves. With their help, the pair got away. At the same time, Logain was brought to the White Tower under heavy guard. Moiraine arranged for Nynaeve to stay at the tower, then brought Logain before Suin, the Emerlin seat, the highest authority in the tower. He was to face the tower's harshest punishment. Soon after, Moiraine tracked down Rand and Mat, now weakened and disoriented. With her power, she drew the darkness from Mat and sealed it inside the cursed dagger. Through another informant, she also located Egwene and Perrin, who had made it to the city. Once they were settled, Moiraine returned to her private quarters. She approached a wall covered in murals and used the One Power to open a secret portal. Beyond it was a bamboo house, and waiting inside was Suin. They were more than allies, they shared a secret bond. To protect Suin's authority, they had always kept their closeness hidden. Moiraine revealed that she had found the dragon reborn, but since 5 of them matched the prophecy, she couldn't determine who it was. Worse, Suin revealed that the Dark One's power was growing stronger by the day. If he broke free, the world would be plunged into ruin. Time was running out. The next day, Moiraine brought Egwene to the tower, where she reunited with Nynaeve. Together, they were brought before Suin. Only Egwene and Nynaeve had shown signs of channeling the One Power. Yet, even Suin couldn't tell which of the 5 was the dragon. Moiraine then approached the Ogre, a reclusive race, to request passage through the ways. Only with their help could they reach the Dark One's prison in time. Soon, the 5 companions were reunited. Since they still didn't know who the true dragon was, Moiraine had no choice but to take them all. She opened a portal using the One Power. One by one, they stepped into the ancient path, but Mat hesitated. With the gate about to close, the others cried out to him, but Mat stepped back. Afraid of what lay ahead, he chose not to follow. Inside the ways lurked terrifying beings that fed on souls. Any use of the One Power would awaken them. The path was dangerous and irreversible. Not long after, they found that the markers guiding them were destroyed. The Ogre tried to repair them, but then Egwene, spotting a Trolloc, instinctively used the One Power. Screeches filled the air. An army of black insect-like creatures descended upon them. Their souls were under attack. Moiraine opened the nearest gate, but Nynaeve couldn't reach the door. Instead, she released her power, blasting the swarm back. In that moment, Moiraine activated the exit, and they escaped. Now, they stood at the edge of the world, just 1 day's journey from the Dark One's prison. They made their way to a border fortress. Inside a tavern, Moiraine met an old friend, someone gifted with the ability to see the threads of the future. She hoped he could tell them who the dragon was, but even he couldn't give her an answer. That night, Moiraine gathered the group. She told them the truth. Only the dragon could face the Dark One and survive. She didn't want the others to die needlessly. The choice was theirs: stay behind, or leave before dawn. The once united group was now divided. Unable to agree, they parted in frustration. Later that night, Rand returned to the tavern, where a woman revealed the truth about his birth. Everything suddenly made sense. He now knew he was the dragon reborn. He found Moiraine and told her. Without hesitation, the two entered the Blight, heading for the Dark One's prison, but they didn't get far. Soon after, a blade plunged into Moiraine's back. The Dark One suddenly appeared, and before anyone could react, he struck down Moiraine in an instant. Snapping out of his daze, Rand quickly fired an arrow, hitting the Dark One right in the eye, but the wound meant nothing to him. With mocking disdain, the Dark One sneered at Rand. How pathetic! The so-called dragon reborn of this age hadn't even mastered the One Power. And then it hit Rand, none of this was real. It was all a dream crafted by the Dark One. Without hesitation, Rand drove a blade into his own body. The illusion shattered. He awoke from the dream, Gasping, Moiraine, realizing the Dark One had sensed their presence, handed Rand a powerful artifact. Inside it was the combined strength of thousands of Aeis Saida enough to amplify Rand's power and seal the Dark One once more. Before long, the two arrived at the heart of the Blight. As they looked around, Rand began to remember he had been here before, in another life. This was the place. The Dark One's prison lay just below. They descended into the depths. Suddenly, memories from his past life flooded his mind. He had faced the Dark One here before. On the ground was a strange, ancient symbol, the yin yang seal that kept the darkness locked away. But as Rand reached out and touched the seal, he found himself standing inside his own home. Stepping outside, he saw Egwene and their child. In the real world, Rand had gone completely still, his body in a trance. Moiraine called out, trying to wake him, but before she could do anything, the Dark One appeared again. Moiraine immediately launched an attack, but the Dark One barely lifted a finger. With a simple gesture, he severed her connection to the One Power, leaving her helpless. Meanwhile, trapped once more in the illusion, Rand realized he was still inside the dream. Egwene and the child before him suddenly froze in place. The Dark One stepped out from the shadows. He spoke softly, persuasively. If they joined forces, he said, Rand could make this dream a reality. As his words sank in, Rand's body began to move on its own. Dark energy crept into him, trying to corrupt his soul. But Rand resisted. He drew out the artifact Moiraine had given him and began channeling the full power within. A brilliant explosion of light erupted, driving the Dark One back and sealing him once again. Meanwhile, back in the border city, Egwene and the others had realized Rand and Moiraine were gone. With no clues, they returned to the tavern, hoping the mysterious woman there might know where they went. But she had no answers. Suddenly, the warning horns rang out. The Trolloc army was approaching the outer gates. The city's lord wasted no time, rallying the troops and racing to the walls to prepare for battle. The siege had begun. Civilians were evacuated quickly. Even the tavern keeper took up arms, helping to organize the city's defenses. At the gates, the monstrous army assembled. On the command of the Murderal, they began their charge. Behind the gates, the few women capable of channeling the One Power stood together, forming the city's last line of defense. But the difference in numbers was overwhelming. Wave after wave of Trollocs crashed down upon them. The defenders fought valiantly, but exhaustion set in. One by one, the soldiers fell. Even the city lord was struck down, collapsing against the wall. The enemy breached the gates. In desperation, the remaining channelers pooled all their power into one woman. She rose into the air, engulfed in light, unleashing a force that wiped out the enemy army in a single instant. But the power was too much. Her body ignited from within, and she fell. The others, overwhelmed by the energy, also began to collapse. Nynaeve dragged herself to Egwene, shielding her from the surge. When the dust settled, only Egwene remained alive. Tears streamed down her face as she cradled Nynaeve's lifeless body. Then something extraordinary happened. A soft glow radiated from Egwene's hands. The energy flowed into Nynaeve's body, and she began to breathe again. Nynaeve had come back from the brink of death. Far away, Rand, having used the One Power, began to feel its toll. He knew what came next: madness. He turned to Moiraine and made one final request: tell the others that he died in the fight. He would stay in the Blight, far from those he loved. He had fulfilled his destiny, but he feared what he might become if he returned. And so, the Dragon Reborn chose exile alone in the shadows beyond the world's edge. I'm a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.